Philip Johnson, the Pritzker awardee in 1979, was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1906, and in the years since has become one of the architecture's most potent forces. Before designing his first building at the age of 36, Johnson had been client, critic, author, historian, museum director, but not an architect. In 1949, after a number of years as the Museum of Modern Art's first director of the architecture department, Johnson designed a residence for himself in New Canaan, Connecticut for his master's degree thesis, the now famous Glass House. Johnson organized Mies van der Rohe's first visit to this country as well as Le Corbusier's. He even commissioned Mies to design his New York apartment. Later, he would collaborate with Mies on what has been described as this continent's finest high-rise building, the Seagram Building in New York. By the 50s, Johnson was revising his earlier views, culminating with a building that proved to be one of the most controversial of his career, the AT&T headquarters in New York with its so-called Chippendale top. Joining forces with partner John Burge from 1969 through 1987, their 20-year output has been nothing short of phenomenal. Since 1989, Johnson, semi-retired, has devoted his time mainly to projects of his own, but still is a consultant to John Burge Architects. His most recent design is for a new School of Fine Arts for Seton Hill College in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Philip Johnson, his work are the Glass House in 1949 at New Canaan, Connecticut, AT&T Corporate Headquarters in 1984 at New York, Crystal Cathedral Garden Grove Community Church in 1980 at California, University of Houston in 1985 at Houston, Texas, and Amon Carter Museum in 1961 to 2001 at Fort Worth, Texas. Luis Barragan, the Pritzker awardee in 1980, was born in Guadalajara, Mexico. His professional training was in engineering, resulting in a degree at the age of 23. His architectural skills were self-taught. In the 1920s, he traveled extensively in France and Spain, and in 1931, lived in Paris for a time, attending Le Corbusier's lectures. His time in Europe, and subsequently in Morocco, stimulated an interest in the native architecture of North Africa and the Mediterranean, which he related to construction in his own country. In the late 1920s, he was associated with a movement known as the Escuela Tapasya or Guadalajara School, which espoused a theory of architecture dedicated to the vigorous adherence to regional traditions. His architectural practice was based in Guadalajara from 1927 until 1936, when he moved to Mexico and remained until his death. His work has been called minimalist, but it is nonetheless sumptuous in color and texture. Pure plains, be they walls of stucco, adobe, timber, or even water, are his compositional elements of interacting with nature. A religious man, Barragan and his work have been described as mystical, as well as serene. His chapel for the Capuchinas Sacramentarias is evidence of both qualities. Because of his interest in horses, he designed many stables, fountains, and water truths that manifest many of these same qualities. Barragan has a profound influence not only on 3 generations of Mexican architects, but many more throughout the world. His work are the Quadrasan Cristobal in 1968 at Mexico City, Bragan House in 1948 at Mexico City, Capuchinas Sacramentos del Purismo Corazon de Maria in 1969 at Mexico City, Las Arboledas in 1962 at Mexico City, Fuente de los Amantes in 1968 at Mexico City.
James Sterling. He was born on April 22, 1926 in Glasgow, United Kingdom. He died for surgical composition on June 25, 1992 at London, United Kingdom. He awarded of Alvar Aalto Medal in 1977, Royal Gold Medal in 1980, pritzker Architecture Prize in 1981. Stereo worker in a partnership with James Gowan from 1956 to 1963, then with Michael Wilford from 1971 until 1992. He also received a series of important compositions in England for his exemplary work of engineer building University of Leicester in United Kingdom. History Faculty, Library Cambridge University at 1967 in United Kingdom. St. Andrew University, 1968 in United Kingdom. Arthur Mr. Sarkar Museum, Harvard University, 1985 in Cambridge. Sklar Gallery in 1987 in London, United Kingdom. Roche, 1982. He was born an Irish-born American pritzker prize-winning architect. He was being responsible for the design master planning for over 200 built projects in both the US and abroad. He born on June 19, 1914 in Dublin, Ireland. He died in March 1, 2019 in Cleveland, United States. He awarded of EA Gold Medal pritzker Architecture in 1982. 25 years award. These are the works of Kevin Roche. Ford Foundation Headquarters Interior at 1963 in New York. Knights of Columbus Headquarters 1970 in New Haven. 3 College Life Insurance Company Headquarters 1971 in Indian. Center for Arts Wesleyan University 1973 in Middletown. Fine Arts Center University 1974 in Amherst. Metropolitan Museum of Arts 1975 in New York. United Nations of Plaza 1 and 2 in UNICEF. Headquartered 1976 in New York.
Yao Mingpei was born in Canton, China in 1917 and came to the United States in 1935 to study first at the University of Pennsylvania and then at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Bachelor of Architecture in 1940, and the Harvard Graduate School of Design, Mastery of Architecture in 1946. In 1955, he formed the partnership of IMP and Associates, which became IMP and Partners in 1966. The partnership received the 1968 Architectural Firm Award of the American Institute of Architects in 1989. The firm was renamed Pei Fried and Partners. Pei was designed over 50 projects in several countries, many of which have been award winners. Two of his most prominent commissions have included the East Building of the National Gallery of Art, 1978, in Washington, D.C. Pei has been chosen the 1983 laureate of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. His structures have received global recognition for the past 3 decades, beginning with the Mile High Center in Denver, Colorado in 1955, and most recently, the Fragrant Hill Hotel, Beijing, China, the country of his birth. Carlton Smith, chairman of the International Awards Foundation and secretary to the jury, announced the name of the laureate, saying Pei was anonymously elected to the honor by our distinguished panel of jurors. The example of his work include the Bank of China in Hong Kong 1989, the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Library in 1979 near Boston, the Morton H. Meyerson Symphony Center 1989 in Dallas, Texas, the Society Hill Development in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, completed in 1964. The Fragrant Hill Hotel, 1982, near Beijing, China. Creative Artists Agency Headquarters, 1989, in Beverly Hills, California. An IBM Office Complex, 1989, in Somers, New York. The Overson Museum of Art, 1968, Syracuse, New York. And the Paul Mellon Art Center, 1973, in Ithaca, New York.
At 49, Richard Meier was the youngest architect to receive his profession's highest accolade, the Pritzker Architecture Prize. Shortly after receiving that honor, he was awarded what is probably one of the 20th century's most important commissions, the design of the Getty Center, the Los Angeles Art Complex founded by the J. Paul Getty Trust. In 1963, he established his private practice and, working from his apartment, launched the business with a commissions for his mother and father, a residence in Essex Fells, New Jersey. In 1965, one of his early residential commissions, Smith House in Darien, Connecticut, propelled him into national prominence. Looking back on it now, Meier spoke of the clarity of the building, the openness, the direct articulation of private and public spaces, how it relates to the land and water. He added, "It's been over 17 years, and what was innovate and captured a great many people's imagination and admiration then is already a part of our language, and somewhat taken for granted today." Other commissions for private homes followed, along with some more public projects. In 1967, he began work on the conversion of the old Bell Telephone Laboratories in Manhattan's Greenwich Village to accommodate some 1,200 people in 383 apartment units. The result was hailed in the architectural community as the first evidence that ultimately Meier's greatest achievements might lie in larger-scale, more public works. In 1979, after devoting nearly 5 years of work to it, Meier completed another work, which prompted Ada Louise Huxtable to write in the New York Times that the building referred to is known as the Athenaeum, situated on the bank of the Wabash River in the restoration community of New Harmony, India. On an even grander scale, the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Georgia was completed in 1983. It opened to enormous media attention, and Paul Goldberger, a architecture critic of the New York Times, wrote in the June 1983 issue of Vogue, "It is no accident, then, that Richard Meier is becoming of the preeminent architects of museums." In addition to the High Museum, he was designed a major museum for Frankfurt, Germany, and additional to the Des Moines Art Center in Iowa, as well as many other types of commissions around the world. Richard Meier Work List: High Museum of Art, 1983, Atlanta, Georgia. Hartford Seminary, 1981, Hartford, Connecticut. The Antinomium 1979 New Harmony Indiana, Douglas House 1973 Harbor Springs, Smith House, Darien, Connecticut.
In 1985, Hans Hollein. Hans Hollein was born in Vienna, Austria in 1934. From his earliest school days, he manifested a talent for drawing. Although he chose architecture as his profession, his works of art are in many public and private collections around the world. He has been described as far more than an architect, artist, teacher, author, and a designer of furniture and silverware. He graduated from the Academy of Fine Arts School of Architecture in Vienna in 1956. He was awarded a Harkness Fellowship which afforded him the opportunity to travel in the United States, and completed his Master of Architecture degree at the University of California, Berkeley in 1960. In 1970, he won praise for his first commission in New York, the Richard Fagan Gallery. In 1978, he completed a tourist office in Vienna. By 1982, he had completed the Municipal Museum Abteilberg in Mönchengladbach near Dusseldorf. The same year that he was named Pritzker laureate, he won two international competitions, one for a Museum of Modern Art in Frankfurt and another for a cultural forum in Berlin. Same year, he designed a major exhibition in Viennese culture entitled Dream and Reality, which opened in Vienna and then made several other stops around the world. Hans Hollein's work, The Reti Candle Shop, Interior and Exterior in 1965, Jewelry Store Schulin 1, Facade in 1974, Austrian Travel Agency, Main Office in 1978, Austrian Travel Agency, Jewish Welcome Center in 1979, the Museum Abteilberg, Mönchengladbach in 1982, the Jewelry Store Schulin 2 in 1983, and the Gymnastic Lesson exhibition at the Museum Abteilberg in 1984.
Gottfried Bohm 1986. Gottfried Bohm was born in Offenbacham, Maine on January 23, 1920. The work of Gottfried Bohm ranges from the simple to the complex, using many different kinds of materials, with results that sometimes feel humble. Sometimes monumental. He has been described in the 60s as an expressionist. He received degree in 1946 for another year. He continued his education studying sculpture at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich. He worked in his father's office as an assistant architect from 1947 to 1950. In 1951, Bohm journeyed to New York, where he worked in the architectural firm of Kaheta and Bowman for 6 months. His study tour over, Bohm returned to work with his father in 1952. His father's influence plus the ideas and theories of Bose were apparent in his first independent projects. In the following 3 decades, he has accomplished many buildings, including churches, museums, theaters, cultural and civic centers, city halls, office buildings, public housing, and apartment buildings, many of the later with the mixed use. Many of Bohn's projects and proposals illustrate his concern for urban spaces. He undertook planning projects for the area around the cathedral and Heumark area in Cologne, the Prager Square in the Berlin, and the area around the castle at Saarbrücken, the Legonto Quarter in Torino. In 1981, Peter DeVille in Architectural Review described some of Bong's buildings as unique subjective work of art that showed Germany and Europe that expressionist tradition is still alive.
Kenzo Tang. He was born September 4, 1913 in Osaka, Japan. He died March 22, 2005 in Tokyo. He's one of the foremost Japanese architects in the decades following World War II. He's one of the world's most honored architects, today become the 1987 laureate of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. He is the ninth recipient of what has come to be known as the most prestigious award in the profession. A native of Japan, Tang is the fifth recipient from outside the United States. Works of Kenzo Tang. Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum 1955, Hiroshima, Japan. St. Mary's Cathedral 1955, Tokyo, Japan. Yoyogi National Gymnasium for the 1964 Summer Olympics, 1964, Tokyo, Japan. Yokohama Museum of Art, 1959, Yokohama, Japan. Tokyo City Hall Complex, 1991, Tokyo, Japan. Two architects, Gordon Brunshaft and Oscar Niemeyer from North and South America, respectively, whose works have been among the most influential and recognized in this century, have been named Pritzker Architecture Prize laureates of 1988. Gordon Brunshaft. He was born in 1909 in Buffalo, New York. He's son of Russian Jewish immigrants. He studied architecture at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, earning his bachelor's degree in 1933 and his master's degree in 1935. He died in August 6, 1990 in New York, United States. Works of Gordon. Lever House, 1952, New York. Joseph H. Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, 1974, Washington, D.C. Yale University Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, 1963, in New Haven, Connecticut. Travertine House, 1962, Hamptons, New York. National Commercial Brand, 1983, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Oscar Niemeyer. He was born in December 14, 1907, States of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He was Brazilian architect considered to be one of the key figures in the development of modern architecture. He is one of the greats of the global modernist movement. His awards are Pritzker Architecture Prize, Royal Medal, Gold Lion, Lenin Peace Prize, and more. He died December 5, 2012. After his death in 2012, he left the world more than 500 works scattered throughout the Americas, Africa, and Europe. Works of Oscar Niemeyer, Brasilia and the Brazilian National Congress, Brasilia's National Museum, Metropolitan Cathedral of Brasilia, Liberty Pantheon Praça dos Três Poderes, Museo de Arte Contemporânea, Museo Oscar Niemeyer Center.